Hello and welcome to the People First Weekly Webinar. I'm your host, Todd Hendricks, and today we're going to be talking about what to do when your team has lost the why of what they're doing and they're just kind of drifting about and they don't have any real purpose or mission then in their work. So let's look at signs that your team has lost their sight and their purpose. So two things. One is you're probably going to see a lack of enthusiasm and some disjointed decision making. And what that looks like is they're not going towards the mission, they're not going towards the vision, and they're not going towards the goals of your company or whatever project it is that they're working on. They're making decisions that may positively affect this over here, but maybe not this over here. And it's just like, why did we make that decision, folks? Like it doesn't make sense. We have to make it make sense. Another thing that you might see is frequent conflict over either priorities or direction. And well, this is a priority. Well, we have to do this. Once you get everybody getting their canoes pointed in the same direction, I like to use that phrase. Once you get everybody pointed in the same direction and working towards mission, vision, and goals, you will then have unity in the work that your people are doing. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Sometimes you need to recast your vision. And this is something that I've got a lot of experience with in implementing new change or structures or policies, procedures, whatever it is. What I like to do is make the change, whatever verbiage I'm like actual vocabulary words, like we're back in school. Okay, today's vocabulary word is this. I start making that part of my daily vocabulary with the people that I have conversations with. So if I'm having conversations about, X, Y, and Z, I am going to find a way to slip in something that we're talking about that has to do with the change or the new policy or whatever. And I'm going to use that verbiage and that language as soon as it's rolled out. Depending on who I'm talking to, I might even start using that verbiage and language before it's rolled out because they might be integral in the rollout or implementation of whatever it is that we're doing. So make it part of your daily language. You have to have repetition of your vocabulary, repetition of your ideas, and repetition of whatever it is that you're working towards. You can't just hit it once at the staff meeting on Monday, say, okay, here we go. This is what we're going to be working towards. And then you don't bring it up again. No, that doesn't work. And one of the chief complaints that I get from leaders, business owners, and people who have to lead other people is like, oh, Todd, I hate saying the same thing over and over again. It's so annoying. Yup. Just like raising your kids. How many times do you tell your kid to clean their room? It gets annoying after a while, but in order for it to get accomplished and to the standard that you want it to be accomplished at, you have to repeat it. You have to go over again and again. And that is part of leadership. If that is something that you cannot do or will not do, then you have to question, are you really going to be in a good position in whatever position you're in your leadership? Is that where you need to be? Can you be there? Because repetition is what you have to do as a leader. Now, does that mean that you're the one who has to say the thing? No, but you are the one that makes sure that the thing gets said. Does that make sense? So maybe you're not the one having those personal conversations, but maybe you have a team of managers who are beneath you who are having conversations on a daily basis. It is imperative that they use it in their daily language. You all have to be, management all has to be on the same page. You all have to be using the same language, talking about the same things positively in order for that implementation to catch hold and then take root and be part of your climate and culture. Now, one caution, don't change too much and too frequently. If you are putting something into place every quarter, like, okay, here's our new change this quarter, eventually your team, your staff are going to be like, okay, what's the new thing that we're going to do for 3 weeks and then forget about? Okay. Purposeful and intentional implementation. You have to be purposeful and intentional with whatever you're implementing, and you have to make it part of your climate and culture. Because if you just implement change or change things and then you don't stick to those things, or nobody is held accountable to those things, or whatever, then they're just going to go away. And then the next time you start rolling out something new or rolling out a new change, people are just going to be like, all right, here we go. Here's the new thing again. Big deal. Yep, this is going to go away in 3 to 4 weeks, just like the last dozen things that we tried to do, right? And why did those last dozen things go away? because nobody was held accountable to them. It wasn't repeated, and leadership was not talking about those things, working for those things, having conversations about those things, and holding people accountable to the standards of those things. Purposeful repetition, intentional conversations. I cannot say that enough. Just like teaching a child to ride a bike, what do you have to do? You have to practice. Okay, we're going to get on the bike. Now we're going to go a little bit. Now we're going to have training wheels. Now daddy's going to run next to the bike, or whatever it is that you have to have the imagery in your mind of something that is repetitive, but then becomes part of the climate and culture of whatever it is that you're doing. Grab onto that thing. Whether it's learning to tie shoes, riding a bike, implementing a new policy at work, implementing a new change order for whatever project you're working on. Whatever it is, purposeful and intentional, and repetitions. Has to be. So one of the ways that you can recast the vision is by repetition. Just I hate to say like beat it into their heads, but that's kind of what you are doing. You know, is the horse dead? Yep, we're going to hit it again. Sorry for you horse lovers out there. So keep going at it. The next thing that you can do is tell stories. We are a verbal people. As human beings, we like to talk. We like to tell stories. If we're not the talkers, we at least like to listen and tell stories about whatever it is that you're working on or towards. If you have a really great example about something, share that. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. This is something I did at my personal church about a year and a half ago. We were looking to kind of revamp part of the lobby area, and we wanted to create a better flow through the building. And so what we needed to do was move some bookcases that had some books on them. And now these bookcases had books on them from our church library in the building. And so the pastor said, well, I'll talk to the church librarian. We'll get those bookcases moved to the other side of the hall. That way we can put up our new sign, and it's all going to work great. All right, sweet, fantastic. So he goes over there, talks to her, and comes back to me a couple days later. And I was like, yeah, so how did the conversation go? We're going to move the bookcases? And he goes, no, we're not going to move the bookcases. The church librarian said no. Okay. Now, I know the church librarian. And I said, well, what did she say? And he said, well, I went to her and I said, I want to move these bookcases from this wall over by that wall. And she was like, no, they're good right there. Because that's where they've been. Like, it makes sense. Everybody knows where they are. And he didn't know how to respond to that. So I said, okay, can I have the conversation with the church librarian and get the bookcases moved? He said, absolutely, because obviously I don't know what I'm doing. So I said, okay, here we go. So I went over to the church librarian. I said, hey, so-and-so, can I talk to you for a second? Can I show you something? Yeah, sure, Todd. So we go out into the church lobby, and I say, all right, you see where the church library is, the door over there. Yep, okay. Do you remember when we painted part of the church library last year? Oh, yeah, I love that color. It looks fantastic. I said, well, what we want to do now is carry that into this part of the lobby. And then what we want to do is we want to put a new sign up right here that says youth group this way. So that way, anybody who's coming to youth group, they know where the youth room is. They know where the youth pastor's office is. All the youth go that way. And then in front of that little sign, we're going to have a table that talks about our youth group and our youth pastor and the youth events and all those different things. And she goes, oh, yeah, that makes a total sense. I said, and then we're going to paint this as well so it matches the first part of the lobby that we did. She goes, oh, yeah, that makes total sense. I see that now. We're probably going to need to move that bookcase over by the church library door, aren't we? I said, that's a great idea. Yeah, I agree. I was kind of thinking the same thing, but yeah, you beat me to it. Okay, so I'll get some of the guys to move it. You don't care when we move it? No, that's fine. Yeah, just move it over by the door. It actually does make sense to have the church library books right next to the church library door. Okay, great. Fantastic. Thank you. All right, great. So I go back to the pastor and I said, yep, we're all set. And he goes, what did you do? I said, I showed her the vision and I gave her the why. He goes, oh yeah, I didn't do either one of those things. I said, I know, but that's okay. You're young, you're new. That's why you have me to help you with these things. So share a story. Hey, remember when we were talking about this last month and we implemented that new policy? Well, let me give you an example of why that policy was implemented. We were working with Sally over here, and Sally was having problems with whatever. Well, we implemented this new policy, and now Sally is one of our clients. This policy directly affected Sally in a positive way, making her contract and her business so much better. This is why we do what we do. This is why we implemented that change and that policy change. So thank you for being on board with that. What did that take me? 15, 20, maybe 30 seconds to say all that? But now I've got a connection. I've got a story. Everybody on the team knows Sally. Knows Sally is one of our best clients and customers, and now knows that what we did had a positive effect on Sally and her business. That's why we do what we do. That's why you share the vision, you share the mission, you share the goals, you share the why over and over and over again. And then when it becomes part of your daily vocabulary, it's part of your climate and culture, and things will go much more smoothly. Another thing, link. Oh, I just talked about this. I'm looking at my notes down here. Link daily work to meaningful outcomes. Yeah, the story with Sally. Those things go together. Meaningful outcomes come from the work that you do. So when you notice somebody who has implemented the change, who has done the change order, who has, done whatever it is that is getting everybody's canoes pointed in the same direction, you highlight that and you mention it. Now you don't have to bring in donuts and throw confetti. You don't have to do all that, but you just have to say, hey, everybody, just real quick, Jim over there did that thing that we were talking about. And Jim, can you just share? Just share what you were talking about? Yep, fantastic. So Jim shares for 15 to 20 seconds about the positive effect that had. Oh, Jim, thanks for that. Good work on that. Appreciate it. What did I just do? I gave all the credit to Jim. I took no credit. I gave all the credit to Jim. I gave him the glory. I let him stand in the spotlight. Now all of his colleagues see what he's doing, the positive benefit that he's doing. All I had to do is let Jim highlight himself. You don't have to stand on the stage in front of the spotlight. Sometimes all you have to do is turn the spotlight on and invite somebody else in, and they will do it for you. Because yes, Todd's the boss, Todd's the manager, Todd's going to give us something new to do. Sure, yep, all right, great, whatever. That's what Todd does. Okay, but now something positive is coming out of this and Jim is sharing it? Huh, okay. So Jim shared it. Oh, and then Sally shared it next week. Now the rest of the employees might have a little fear of missing out, some FOMO, be like, wow, Jim did it, Sally did it. Maybe this really is a better thing. So if they're resistant, this might help them get on board and say, hey, you know what? Maybe I better start doing this. Or you know what? I'm not aligned with the mission, the vision, or the goals. I really need to do that. Jim's aligned, Sally's aligned. Things are seeming to go really well for them right now. Their work's getting better. The clients are happy. That's why we're all here. Okay, let's do it. So we do it. The next thing is creating a rhythm and ritual to reinforce mission alignment. So what does that look like? Maybe it's a good job spotlight. This is something that I helped an organization implement just because we were having a hard time with this organization buying into the leadership that we were teaching them. So we're like, okay, here's what we're going to do. A good job spotlight. And every time we have a staff meeting, you can nominate anybody. It's not a big deal. There's no awards printed up or certificates or anything like that. But everybody gets the opportunity to nominate somebody else for a good job spotlight. And all you do is say, hey, I nominate Jim for good job spotlight because he is aligned with the mission and vision with that new thing that we're doing. And I saw what he was doing. His clients are really happy. His work looks really good. So I'm just calling out Jim for doing a great job. Done. 30 seconds. 30 seconds. That's all it takes. I've said this again. I'm a broken record on this. Exceptional leadership can be done in short bursts of 15 to 30 seconds. Pick your time limit. It doesn't have to be much. You just have to pick the right ways to do those things. So start meetings with a purpose, with reminders, with a good job spotlight for Jim over there, who's doing a fantastic job. No, Jim's not actually over there, but I'm making you think that he is. Jim's doing a great job. Good job spotlight. Go Jim. Thank you. Also, you as the leader need to coach and mentor and get people kind of on board. Not kind of on board, but really on board. You are the leader. So what you say, people are going to listen to whether they want to or not, because you're in charge. So take that mantle of leadership and be like, okay, here's what I need to do. Jim, let's just use Jim again. Jim is not on board. He's resistant to the change because he's seen change come and go and it's never stuck. This one is sticking. and we need it to stick because it's imperative that it sticks. So, hey, Jim, I saw your report that doesn't quite go along with the mission and the goals of the project. So do you think you could realign those a little bit so that it's more in line with the goals? Great. Thank you so much. Specifically, yes. Specifically, what I would like you to look at points 2 and 7. Yes. Perfect. If you could just redo those or just tweak them a little bit so they're more in line with our mission, that would be fantastic. Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. Done. You have to be able to have that conversation. So I had a conversation with a group of people yesterday about finding their voice. What is their voice? What is the mindset that they need to tap into so that they can find that authoritative voice? And when I say authoritative voice, I don't mean like you have to be strong or stern. Sometimes you do, but I don't mean that. You have to find a mental headspace, a mindset where you think, oh no, that's not going to fly. I need to fix that. We're going to fix that. That's unacceptable. Now, you don't have to say those words, but that's the frame of mind that you need to be in when you get there. So it's like, oh, Jim's work is not good. Oh, and if I'm kind of scared of Jim or scared of the conflict or scared of the conversation, I'm gonna be like, oh boy, I don't want to. Yeah, okay, yeah, it was good, Jim. Yep, thanks, buddy. Yep, appreciate it. Yep. Oh man, I'm gonna have to spend an hour fixing this. No, don't do that. What is it in your life that makes you feel empowered, strong? So let me tell you a story. I was meeting with a client one-on-one, and this client was paying me to meet with one of her managers, one of her direct reports. She's the owner, and she wanted me to meet with one of her managers. And she's like, I just need you to help her find her voice. She is phenomenal at the work. There's no one better at the work, but she is a quiet person. She's not very outgoing, and her direct reports, the staff, are very extroverted, and she's kind of introverted. So I was talking to her about these things, talking to the manager, and I said, hey, do you think you could have this conversation? Oh, I don't know. I'm just not very confident there. I'm just a quiet person. I'm kind of subdued. And I said, hey, you have kids, right? She's like, yeah, I've got 2 kids, 3 and 5. Okay. All right. Do you ever let them play out in the yard? Yeah. Yeah. I let them play out in the yard. Do you ever like sit on the front deck or the front porch and just kind of watch them play? Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, we do that. I said, what if a strange man walked up to the fence and was like, hey, little kids, want some candy? Come here. Don't worry about your mom. Come here. I got some candy in my pocket. Let me give you some candy. I said, what would your mindset be about that situation? And she said, oh, absolutely not. Kids, inside, you out of my yard. I said, right there. Right there. That's the mindset. You just took charge of that situation. Now, you don't have to be aggressive in your speech. You don't have to yell and have a mean looking face, but that's the mindset of, oh no, no. That's what I want you to tap into. And she kind of thought about it and she's like, that makes sense. Said, all of your staff members are your work kids. You're the work mom. These are your work kids. You have to have the mindset of coaching and training them that they will be the best children that you can raise, because really that's kind of a similar relationship. At work, you're the manager and you want to cultivate your staff so that they can be the best staff that they can be, because maybe you might even promote from that staff at some point, or maybe you're going to move up and you're going to need to replace yourself with somebody from that staff. So you want them to be the best that they can be. What do you need to do? You need to coach them. You need to mentor them. You need to work them through some of these problems. So with all that said, when your people have lost their why, when they're adrift and they're not making good decisions, when there's conflict and you need to get all of your canoes pointed in the same direction, these things are going to help you get things going in the direction that you need them to go. So I hope you have found this helpful. If this is something that you think, man, Todd, this makes a lot of sense, I wish I had somebody who could help me do that. That's what I do. I am a leadership consultant and coach, and I help people get their people where they need to be, or get yourselves to where you need to be. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you found this valuable. We will see you all next week on the People First Weekly Webinar. Have a great weekend, everybody.